Welcome to the deep dive. So today, our mission is to unpack a really, truly gripping new article by AI thought leader Johan Steyn.
Yeah, it's a powerful piece. It's titled "The Door Was Closing at Both Ends, and Nobody Told Them."
Right. And we are layering Steyn's analysis with this massive stack of data from 2025 and 2026. I mean, we're looking at reports from The Economist, the job search platform Monster, the British Standards Institution.
Not to mention some pretty stark warnings from top executives in the AI space.
Exactly. And our focus today is on a phenomenon that is basically redefining the global workforce, which is the AI graduate trap.
It's a dynamic that essentially it rewrites the whole value of a university credential. We are looking at the class of 2026, right? So an entire cohort of students who utilized artificial intelligence to navigate the hurdles of their degrees.
Like writing papers and all that.
Right. Only to graduate and discover that the exact same AI tools have automated away the entry-level jobs they're now applying for.
The door closed on both ends, and this matters to you, the listener, regardless of where you sit in the corporate hierarchy. Like, whether you're a recent graduate trying to break into the workforce, or a manager tasked with building a team, or just someone trying to navigate this massive technological shift without, getting overwhelmed.
Yeah, it fundamentally changes what it means to be qualified.
Exactly. The rules of the professional game haven't just changed, the entire board has been flipped over.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with that first closing door, the educational mechanism at play here.
Right.
How are students actually utilizing this technology, and what is it fundamentally doing to their cognitive development?
Well, students are essentially deploying large language models as a proxy for their own cognition. I mean, they're using AI to draft complex analytical essays, synthesize dense reading materials, write foundational code.
Which sounds super efficient on the surface.
It does, but the critical distinction here is that they are successfully generating the output required to pass the class, but they are entirely bypassing the cognitive process that the degree was, designed to force them through.
But, I mean, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Hasn't technology always made learning easier? Like, the established academic guard has always panicked about it, right?
Sure. The classic calculator argument.
Exactly. I remember reading that educators thought calculators would completely destroy our ability to comprehend math, but they didn't. They just allowed us to perform complex calculations faster. So if I use AI to write the basic framework of a research paper, isn't that just a massive efficiency gain?
I see where you're going.
To me, it feels like taking an escalator up to the gym. Why waste my energy climbing the stairs when the actual workout is about to happen on the weight floor?
Right. That is the most common defense of these tools. But the escalator analogy has, a pretty fatal flaw in the context of higher education.
Oh, really? How so?
Because writing the essay or debugging that basic code, it isn't the stairs leading to the gym. It is the treadmill.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You aren't taking the escalator to conserve energy for the real workout. You're taking an escalator directly over the treadmill, grabbing a complimentary smoothie on your way out, and genuinely convincing yourself you built muscle.
So the output is identical, but the internal development is just zero.
Exactly. And to understand why this is fundamentally different from a calculator, we really need to look at an essay by Micah Nathan, an MIT lecturer. It was published in The Guardian.
Right, I read that one.
He makes this brilliant observation about the nature of learning. He points out that the sheer struggle of translating a chaotic thought into structured language isn't just a hurdle you jump over to prove you learned something.
It is the actual learning.
Yes.
Yeah.
That struggle is the substance of learning.
Like sitting in front of a blank document, trying to figure out how to sequence a messy argument, identifying gaps in your own logic. That friction is where the mental scaffolding is built.
Precisely. So when a student delegates that specific friction to a machine, they aren't merely saving a few hours of typing. They're forfeiting the developmental process that builds critical thinking, analytical rigor, complex problem solving.
Outsourcing the brain work.
Yeah. Johan Steyn notes that these students are producing academic work with no real author. And more alarmingly, they're graduating without the cognitive architecture that the four-year degree was supposed to construct.
So they possess the credential, the piece of paper, but the structure behind it is entirely hollow.
Right. Which brings us to the second closing door, and honestly, a terrifying reality check.
Because these students graduate with this hollow architecture, meaning they actually require more on-the-job training than any generation before them, But they arrive in the 2026 job market to find that the jobs where they would have acquired those foundational skills, well, they've vanished.
Completely vanished.
Yeah. And here's where it gets really interesting. Let's look at the sheer scale of the global data on the death of the entry-level role, because we're no longer dealing with theoretical predictions here.
No, we've moved entirely past forecasting. The data from late 2025 and early 2026 paints a very stark picture of what's already happening on the ground.
So let's break down the mechanics of this shift. Like the Economist's 2026 analysis, it shows that AI isn't spawning a wave of new AI managing junior roles like many optimists predicted, right?
Well, not at all. Instead, it's dramatically raising the bar for the few junior roles that remain. Employers are actively discounting university credentials because they just assume AI was used to obtain them.
Right. They don't want a junior employee who needs to learn how to write a packet memo because AI does that in 3 seconds.
Exactly. They want a junior employee who can instantly critically evaluate the strategic implications of that AI-generated memo, which is a skill that historically took, 3 years of writing bad memos to develop.
And businesses are acting on this aggressively. Like, look at the British Standards Institution, or BSI, their global study.
Yeah, they polled 850 business leaders across major economies, the US, the UK, Japan, Germany.
And staggering 39% of those executives reported they've already eliminated entry-level roles as a direct result of generative AI.
And another 43% expect to make those cuts within this current calendar year.
Which is wild. And the projections from the tech leaders driving this change are even more aggressive. You've got Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, publicly warning that AI possesses the capability to absorb roughly 50% of all entry-level white-collar jobs within the next 5 years.
50%.
Yeah. We're talking about half of all basic data analysis, research, synthesis, and administrative roles just wiped off the organizational chart.
And the upcoming workforce is acutely aware of this. Monster's 2026 Graduate AI Readiness Report surveyed recent and upcoming grads and found 89% of them are terrified of this exact scenario.
And Old Mutual Investments even flagged specific vulnerabilities, right? Like admin work, basic coding, data entry, junior financial analysis. And I want you, the listener, to just pause for a second and picture your very first professional job.
The foundational one.
Yeah, think about that role where you learned how to navigate office politics, or how to communicate with an angry client, or how to fix a minor operational error without bringing down the entire department. Imagine if a software update simply erased that role from the economy before you ever had the chance to apply.
It forces a massive shift in our perspective. Because we naturally view this through the lens of the struggling graduate, but Steyn argues we need to flip the camera around. We have to look at the corporations doing the automating.
Right.
Because while this is undeniably a crisis for the young job seeker, it's a slow-moving existential disaster for the businesses themselves.
I struggle with that logic, though. I mean, if a company automates its data entry and basic coding, their operational costs plummet, right? Their quarterly margins look fantastic. They're getting the exact same work done for a fraction of the cost. So how is that a disaster for them?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to revisit Steyn's previous writings on AI for business. He points out a fundamental misunderstanding of what entry-level work actually achieves within a corporate structure.
Which is what?
That entry-level work was never exclusively about the output.
What was it about then?
Let's look closely at the technology sector. Right now, AI assistants like GitHub Copilot and Amazon Code Whisperer are, they're incredibly proficient at handling boilerplate code.
Right, and just to clarify for our non-technical listeners, boilerplate code is essentially the repetitive, foundational building blocks of a program that don't require much creative problem solving.
Precisely. And AI is also excellent at fixing routine, well-documented bugs. So software companies are deploying these tools and realizing, hey, we don't need to hire a team of junior developers. The AI handles the basic output.
What makes sense on paper.
Right. But here is the critical failure in that logic. Fixing those routine bugs was the training ground. That was the necessary proving ground, where a junior developer built the mental map of the company's entire software architecture.
Oh, I see.
The output, the fixed bug, was secondary. The primary product of that entry-level job was the professional development of the employee.
It's like a Major League Baseball franchise firing their entire minor league system to save money on salaries. Sure, your balance sheet look incredibly lean and profitable this season, but 3 years from now, when your star pitcher retires or gets injured, who do you call up?
You don't have anyone, because you eliminated the environment where they develop. The job wasn't just to produce code. The job was to produce a senior developer.
Wow, that is a perfect analogy.
Yeah, and Steyn identifies this as a massive invisible cost. The visible cost of this AI transition is the unemployed 22-year-old graduate. But the invisible cost is the 32-year-old senior leader, the visionary product manager, the seasoned systems architect, who will never exist 10 years from now.
Because their foundational junior role was handed to an algorithm today.
Exactly. The talent pipeline is effectively severed at the root.
So what does this all mean for the bottom line long term? Companies are just blinding themselves with the promise of short-term efficiency. They're basically trading their future leadership pipeline for a quick bump in this quarter's margins.
They're calling it optimization. But Steyn argues that economic history will view it as a colossal strategic error. And while this broken pipeline is a massive corporate headache in developed economies like the US and the UK, we have to look at what happens when you drop this exact same dynamic into an economy that is already on the brink.
Which takes us to the South African context, where the stakes transition from corporate sustainability to a severe systemic crisis. Because when you apply this global AI squeeze to a nation already grappling with a historical unemployment crisis, the math gets incredibly dark.
It really does.
Let's look at the Q4 2025 statistics for South Africa. The official national unemployment rate sits at 31.4%. But when you look at the broad youth unemployment rate, people aged 18 to 35, it is an astonishing 52.43%.
Meaning you have 8.8 million young people classified as NEET. That stands for not in education, employment, or training. 8.8 million young adults entirely disconnected from the formal economy.
And concurrently, you have reports showing South Africa's AI market grew by 31% year over year between 2023 and 2024. Now, on paper, technological growth of that magnitude should be an economic engine, right?
It should be.
But that growth isn't acting as an economic sponge for those 8.8 million people. Why isn't a booming AI sector creating a wave of new jobs for the youth?
Well, that is the critical observation highlighted by the Daily Maverick. This 31% growth in the AI sector is not trickling down into a wave of new junior administrative or basic tech roles. Instead, the technology is simply raising the barrier to entry for the few roles that still exist.
Right.
We can see the mechanics of this clearly in research from Harambee, which focuses on youth employment. They found that over 40% of the tasks in South Africa's business process outsourcing, or BPO, and IT services sectors are highly vulnerable to automation.
And the BPO sector, like call centers, basic IT support, customer service, that is historically the massive entry point for millions of people. It's the crucial first step on the economic ladder.
It is the absolute foundation of upward mobility in that economy. But the tasks most exposed to AI in these sectors are repetitive and rules-based. I mean, if an AI agent can instantly access a database to resolve a customer complaint or reset a password, the need for a human agent vanishes. And we must emphasize the demographic reality here. The individual caught in this trap is not just some theoretical data point. In the South African context, this graduate is highly likely to be young, female, and from a historically disadvantaged background.
She did everything she was told to do. She fought for the credential that society promised was her ticket out of poverty and into the formal economy.
But the landscape shifted beneath her feet. The AI tools made the academic credential easier to obtain, perhaps, undermining her own cognitive development in the process, while simultaneously making her entry point into the workforce nearly impossible to find.
Yeah.
Steyn is uncompromising on this point. This is a systemic failure across the board. It's a result of academic institutions failing to protect the integrity of the learning process, employers prioritizing immediate cost savings over long-term human development, and a national skills infrastructure that is simply outpaced by the speed of algorithmic capability.
The floor is completely falling out for the most vulnerable populations. It is staggering to consider the sheer volume of human potential that's just being locked out of the economy.
It really is.
So what are the proposed interventions? Because there has to be some concerted effort to stop this free fall.
Well, there are major interventions happening, but we have to carefully distinguish between localized band-aids and true systemic solutions. For instance, the source material highlights the YES and Microsoft AI Skills Initiative.
Right, the training program.
Yeah, it's a program designed to provide 50,000 young South Africans with free, comprehensive AI training and globally recognized certifications.
Which, on the surface, sounds like a fantastic initiative, providing 50,000 young people with the exact technical skills the market supposedly demands.
What's fascinating here is the sheer scale of the structural mismatch. I mean, Providing certifications to 50,000 individuals is highly meaningful for those specific people. But 50,000 is a statistical drop in the ocean compared to a population of 8.8 million NEET youth.
That's a sobering perspective.
And furthermore, Steyn points out a brutal economic truth. If you aggressively close the qualification gap without simultaneously closing the job gap, you haven't actually solved the unemployment crisis.
Yeah.
You've merely created a more highly educated, more heavily certified pool of unemployed people.
You just have people holding much fancier AI-stamped certificates standing outside the exact same locked door. It leads to rampant credential inflation and massive societal frustration.
Exactly. Which means the ultimate responsibility cannot simply be pushed onto the education sector or upskilling programs. The burden falls squarely back on the organizations that are deploying this technology.
Right.
For corporate boards and executive leadership, Steyn argues that the core strategic question is no longer whether to automate entry-level work. Ruthless market pressures and competitor inefficiency will force that hand anyway. The defining question is, what moral and operational obligation follows from that automation?
And this is where I want to directly challenge the listeners out there who hold leadership positions, who manage departments, or who dictate corporate strategy. If you are leveraging AI to automate away the junior roles in your organization, you are actively breaking a historical social compact.
Yeah.
You're pulling the economic ladder up behind you.
Absolutely.
So, what exactly are you replacing that entry-level role with? Are you investing the money you saved into building highly structured, intensive graduate training programs? Are you intentionally designing AI-augmented roles that pair a junior human's developing judgment with a machine's raw capability, specifically to teach them the nuances of your industry?
Or are you just accepting a smaller, cheaper workforce today and completely ignoring the catastrophic talent drought that is going to paralyze your company a decade from now?
It ultimately boils down to a question of legacy and corporate sustainability. A business, no matter how technologically advanced, simply cannot survive if it forgets the mechanics of how to build its own people.
It really can't.
It is a profound and unsettling shift in how we structure society. We're witnessing the devastating simultaneity of the class of 2026. The exact same technology that is rapidly closing the doors to their very first job is the technology they utilize to avoid developing the complex cognitive skills required to do it. The door was closing at both ends, and they were trapped in the hallway.
And as we conclude this analysis, this entire dynamic raises a vital question, one that wasn't explicitly laid out in the data, but is the inevitable logical endpoint of this broken pipeline crisis.
What's that?
If artificial intelligence completely replaces the junior phase of a human career, how will we define an expert in 2036?
Wow.
Will the concept of seniority no longer mean a decade of hands-on experience, painful trial and error, and late-night problem solving? Will it simply denote the sheer technical ability to architect and audit autonomous AI agents?
That's wild to think about.
And perhaps most chillingly, if these advanced AI models learn and refine themselves by training on high-quality human outputs, what happens to the AI of tomorrow when humans stop producing the foundational entry-level work today?
That is heavy. We will leave you to mull over that paradox. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.